Hi everyone. So there's a question that I've been asked quite a bit recently, right? And to some extent, this has surprised me. Not because the question is meaningless, not because what it is asking about is false, but because I just thought that that was not as prevalent a problem for INFJs as it might in fact be, if I'm to base myself on the prevalence, just of how often I get asked that question. Oh, there's a nice little bird. So the question is, why is it that INFJs interrupt themselves in speech when they talk, with all that it implies in terms of potential barriers to eloquence and inhibition, and at the same time the role of TI in this. Right. So CL strife was mentioned in this most recently, and it does seem to be a concern that INFJs have. Of course, it also reflects the concern that INFJs have with the use of the TI function. I'm more often asked questions about TI than about FE, even though FE is the auxiliary function, you know. And I think this reflects the typical introverted preoccupations of an introverted type. But it also reflects the risk that there is an overvaluation of TI over FE, which is a well-known risk I've talked about a lot in my books, as you know. Nevertheless, TI, of course, is an important challenge for INFJs, and there is something to be said here. So first of all, the difficulties in speech, particularly interruptions of speech, reflect something deeper, which is an interruption of the thought process. It's a process of self-correction. It's kind of like you're thinking, but at the same time that you're thinking, you're analyzing your thoughts and bringing in corrections. So like these deliberations and corrections and slight updates to your thinking contributes to interruptions. And so you have to start again, right? You have to resume from where you were going, but in a sense, you've lost the momentum. So it's not just a case of speech. You know, speech is only the outer layer of what is really happening at the level of thought and thinking, and not at the level of mere talking, of mere speech. So, number one, it is certainly right to say that the main function behind this is the TI function. Right? TI is all about internal deliberation, internal self-correction, internal analysis and detection of incoherence and inconsistency. Right? So it has certainly some important qualities that every INFJ wants to have. You know, if they are not to be incoherent and inconsistent and too vague and too formless in their thought, like if that happens, forget about talking about how it's going to be difficult for you to articulate a particular worldview. It's also going to be difficult for you to interact with others, you know, because all social interactions are regulated by certain formalities, and those formalities are also picked up by TI, and they are absolutely central to human interaction. So TI is the main culprit when there are issues. Now there can be, you see, and this is probably like what I really want to drive home with this video. There's not just one single issue that INFJs have with TI. I think there's at least two issues that INFJs have with TI, possibly more, but maybe I'll focus on the two that seem most obvious to me, and they are exemplified in different types of INFJ. So the first issue, which is the one that INFJs often think about, is when TI is too undeveloped. So again, this leads to all the difficulties I just talked about, and it will not surprise you to hear that often the lack of development in TI is associated with solipsism, right? And some people might have thought that the lack of development of TI is associated with compliance, with adaptive submission. There are cases where TI is undeveloped in adaptive submission, but remember, an adaptive submissive INFJ is an INFJ who is always doubting themselves. That's why they need to feel like they belong to a group, and they need to secure all possible ways of being integrated and safe within that circle. Now, the reason is self-doubt. Okay, doubt about the autonomy of the self, doubt about the ability of the self to be truly authentic and autonomous, that there are going to be dangers otherwise. So if you like, the submission is implemented mostly through FE, in introjective FE. But before the submission, the fear, the realization that the self might not be, independent on its own resources to survive authentically. Now that's a realization brought about by TI, not by FE. So TI, if you like, incites FE to act in this compliant, submissive way. So TI is often quite present in adaptives, but it doesn't mean that it's always very positive, and I'll come back to that. Solipsistic INFJs, contrary to what people believe, they don't necessarily loop NI and TI. They can do that, certainly, but there's also cases where solipsistic INFJs are kind of more merged with their NI, all right? And they have this kind of absorption in the NI world. TI, like I said, is as a judging function, it's hard not to have it paired with FE at some level along the judging axis. So often the appearance of more TI, again, contrary to what some people may believe, may sort of foreshadow the emergence of more FE as well. So the absence of TI leads to this formlessness, leads to this difficulty in engaging in social interaction, leads to a certain overly digressive form of thinking that is just lacking patternicity and structure. So of course there's going to be lots of difficulties with that. But there's another issue that INFJs as tertiary TI users have with TI, which is not talked about enough, is what I would call morbid rationalism. Right? Morbid rationalism. And by this I mean that, you see, this is actually not really a problem that a lot of TI dominants have. And this may sound paradoxical, but TI dominants don't really have a problem with TI in the same way that NI dominants don't have a problem with NI, or usually do not have a problem with NI. Often the more distant from your sort of center of gravity of function is, the more you tend to idealize it, as you know, and be fascinated by how you could get better at it, and you have a sort of almost an excessive respect for it. And so morbid rationalism was when certain INFJs discover they can use TI, and they start applying it to everything all the time. And what happens is they start constantly analyzing their own thought processes, and so they do interrupt themselves. They do come across as if they're both talking, analyzing, interrupting, correcting, and moving forward and correcting again. The problem is that this can slip into doubt, not just about the consistency of the thought process, but existential doubt about the very meaning of their life. That's a slippery slope, and that can lead into nihilism. So you have to be really careful how you handle it. Like TI as a tool to make yourself better understood through better structure, better consistency, to refine your insights from the NI world, that's all great. But there's such a thing as morbid rationalism, and you have to be aware of it. Okay, if you want to know more about INFJs, guys, by the way, I've written 2 books on the INFJ. The Ecstatic Soul is my original book on the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness. It's available at the link below. It's the deepest investigation into the nature of the INFJ mind and what it's like to be an INFJ that you will find online. So check it out. Check the reviews. There's lots of them, and they're quite positive. There's also, of course, the Infinite Soul, my latest book on the INFJ, which is all about INFJ life in the modern world. So a lot of my recent videos have been more in the direction of the Infinite Soul, of course, building on my original theoretical foundations in the Ecstatic Soul. So the Infinite Soul goes very well with the Ecstatic Soul, as you can see from the covers. is all about how authentic INFJ experience and the maintenance of it in existence in daily life, rather than the repression of that, is actually the key to adaptation and to leading and living a productive life, a purposeful life, a meaningful life. But there are so many risks associated with abandoning one's INFJ, one's own INFJ vision because the world seems hostile. So how to avoid that trap? This book explores it. Check the first link below if you're interested. And as usual, guys, don't forget my Patreon page is down below. It is the absolute life source and lifeblood of my channel. I could not do it without you. I depend almost entirely on you for my revenue, so I can continue producing good quality videos every day for you. You get access to bonus content if you subscribe. I recently released a bonus video. We're probably going to open a Discord soon to get access to me, to the community. It's great. It is not expensive. Check it out below. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.